welcome to The Art and the Artist. We're going to talk about the art in terms of bronze art that is done by K.R. Nariman, our guest today. As you can see, this is the book written by K.R. Nariman, which talks about the sculptures that she's made. I have had the pleasure of attending her exhibitions in Delhi and Ahmedabad. Good to see you, K.R. Nariman, and looking forward to some interesting insights in this whole world of art with you. Bronze sculptures, as we know, is not common. I mean, it's you don't associate it with a lot of people will think art means paintings, art means stone sculptures. Bronze sculptures, though have been, in a sense, made since the Bronze Age. You even today get sculptures of deities dating back to thousands of years. But in the modern time, we hear it's a painstaking and a long drawn process to make a bronze sculpture. Could you just explain to us what bronze sculptures are all about?
Thanks, Tarun. So with bronze sculptures, actually, the material itself is extremely hard and therefore not that easily malleable, due to which we actually start with making a sort of an iron base, which is an armature. We build clay on top of it, and then we have different casting processes until the bronze is liquefied and then poured into the mold. So we actually have negative molds of plaster and then wax and then resin. And then after that, you have the liquid bronze, which is then poured in and then broken open again, cleaned with acid, and then finally use chemicals on top. So it's an extremely long process and therefore quite tedious to make.
Okay. When did you start making bronze sculptures? How many years have passed?
I started bronze 9 years ago.
9 years ago. In fact, people tell me that bronze sculptures, which we can see in farmhouses, hotels, even many people's houses, they cost. I mean, you have a price to pay for it. It's not something which is in a sense cost effective. It is something for the connoisseur, people who appreciate and enjoy art. Why is it so?
The thing is that bronze, as always, it's a scarce material. So, it's one of the precious materials as well. And it lasts literally lifetimes. So it's something that is a family heirloom. It's something that you can pass down through generations. So it can literally go on for thousands of years. So it's not something that will disintegrate, not something that will get damaged, not something that will happen. So I think you're not only paying for the skill and the labor involved within it, but also something that families can keep, for generations to come.
So you mean that a sculpture that you make today in 2023 can as well be in somebody's hand in 3023, which is 1,000 years from now?
Absolutely.
So it is that precious. I mean, this is something you can hand me down through generations together.
Absolutely.
Could you tell us what kinds of people buy these sculptures, where they keep it? For hotels, where, I mean, we also want to know where all these things get installed, so public places.
So, unfortunately, like you correctly said, it's not cost effective, so not everyone can afford it. But hotels, definitely, hoteliers keep it within lobbies, in hotel rooms. We also have people who have farmhouses, and frankly speaking, people even who have flats, whether in metropolitan cities, anywhere, people who have even holiday homes in places like Alibag, places like Lonavala, all of these areas, even in mountain homes, all these people keep their precious bronzes and all within the house to sort of liven up the area, so to speak. So we've got from hoteliers to even industrialists, of course, and builders.
Okay. So tell me one thing, the whole concept of bronze sculptures in India, how prevalent it is, which all states has more of it, because traditionally this was something we all know. We studied it in class that there were bronze sculptures made. Even now, we'll see some Indian bronze sculpture in a New York auction where people pay millions of dollars for a sculpture. It's valued that much. Could you explain in India how is it in the present context?
So I would say, of course, India went through the Bronze Age, which everybody knows about. Yes. And you have the great Chola works also that are in brass and bronze today. So South India definitely is a very sort of visible hub within this sphere as well. Yeah, but in having said that, even the North, especially the metropolitan cities, so you have Bombay and Delhi and even Calcutta, all of these spaces today, and Chhattisgarh has some of the best craftsmen, even today in India. So in present day India, So Chhattisgarh, you have places in Rajasthan. Some of the best craftsmen in India come out of these spaces even today. So it's a long drawn craft. It's also something that, like I was saying, even how bronzes get passed through like generations. I think even craftsmen come through generations. They learn from their fathers, who learn from their fathers. So unfortunately, now it's not as prevalent, I would say, as before. But in having said that, I wouldn't say it's a dying art for sure. I definitely say it's picking up.
If you could just explain at what point does bronze melt, because you sculpt these things, how time taking it is in something of that sort.
So even a bronze as like you can see this right here. This is a
Yes,
small turtle on a rock. It's actually just this big.
yes,
This one tiny piece has taken me 2 months to make.
2 months.
And unfortunately, that's just the kind of time and labor, and it is labor intensive. There's not much you can do about it. And it melts at 1,000 degrees centigrade. So, water, the melting point of water is 100. So you can imagine it's.
So, yeah, so you have small furnaces to get it to that.
Absolutely. So what we do is we actually have an underground pit in India for the most part. We use an underground pit with a fan on one end, and we put basically, wood and coal and everything, and use the air pressure to build up the heat in a lead pot, which we keep which we keep pieces of bronze in. And then over time it melts. And once it reaches 1,000 degrees centigrade, that its melting point. So it takes hours also for the bronze to fully melt.
Acha, in India, you come from a family of lawyers. Your grandfather is a lawyer. Your father is a lawyer. When you chose art, and a very niche field in art, you could people are painters, people do other kinds of sculptures. Plaster of Paris is very common. We see in India, all installations happen. How did you get into bronze art?
I think I have to attribute that to my mentor, K.S. Radhakrishnan. I worked in his studio for 3 years in Delhi, and that's how I started on bronze. So the first time I had gone to a studio, I hadn't even conceptualized or dreamt of ever making one. And he's one of the pioneers, I would say, today in bronze sculptures. So it, I think, came out of a sense of being in a studio and then just falling in love with the material. Because I think I saw it day in, day out, people working on it. And that's how I started with bronze. And having done all different materials as well, it's something that I just absolutely love working on. I'm privileged enough to be able to work on it, of course, because it's extremely expensive. And other than that, it's malleable. So you can actually make a bronze literally from, say, 2 centimeters to, 50, 100 feet tall. So,
1,500 feet tall.
Absolutely. If you weld the bronze, it'll stand. There's no issues. So bronze is amazing as a material. You can literally do anything with it, anything.
So you mean you can have those 230, 40 feet tall statues also put up in bronze? Must be very expensive.
Absolutely. They're extremely expensive. That's the only thing. But the point is that they're doable. So it's fantastic.
So generally, traditionally, it has been said that art flourishes when in rich kingdoms. When there is enough money for the common people, then money can be devoted to art. And the great arts have always flourished in kingdoms which were rich. In countries like India, do you see patrons of arts, people who like to buy art as a measure to collect art in bronze? Of course, we know paintings are a market where corporates also invest. What about bronze art?
I do feel like bronze and sculpture art especially is definitely coming up in India today. I think abroad, traditionally, it's been there for, centuries now. People still collect them. I do believe there are patrons now that are coming out and really learning to appreciate and collect sculptures. So I think it's definitely coming out. And like you correctly said, we do have patrons across India. India, I mean, it's such a diverse land. It's beautiful, but we've got from, unfortunately, the very poor to the extremely rich. So we do have a lot of patrons today that are coming out and even buying art and buying bronze and really promoting artists.
Tell me, what is the potential in your view about Indian artists and art in bronze getting to a global scale? Because time and then there is news in the newspapers that 1,000-year deity, 1,200-year-old deity in bronze is being auctioned off in this city, that city of the world, and people pay insane amounts of money. And beautifully so, because these bronze sculptures are still the same as they were made 1,000 years ago. I mean, nothing changes. The detailing is also the same. In fact, there was an article in the newspaper about one more sculpture that was sold recently. So, could you see India developing as a hub for these sculptures to get exported across places all over the world?
Absolutely, 100%. I think we really have the potential. I think it's also coming up. I think we've got the people who are inclined. We have the art market that's really starting to build in India. And I think also, especially like a place in Delhi, which is very much an art hub today, and Bombay, and Bangalore, Calcutta, all these places, where even seeing the smaller cities today now come up slowly within art. And I feel like we have a lot of money in India. We have a hell of a lot of culture. We always have. And I think people are really starting to appreciate, art. And I do believe at some point we will definitely be leaders in this sort of global scale, because we've got the skill. There are so many people. We have so much labor here. We've got land here. So
I attended your exhibition in Delhi and Ahmedabad. You had some really large installations also, a tree made of bronze.
yeah,
In one of the installation you had was on a tusk. You had, I think, a hippopotamus walking on a tusk.
yeah, right.
Rhino walking on a tusk. Can you explain about some of these artworks?
Of course. So a lot of my things are to do with wildlife conservation and environmental
As a
consciousness.
theme that you like?
As a theme that I appreciate and I like, and it's a trajectory that I'm taking for now. So the rhino on the tusk actually came out from one of my travels. I'd gotten to Kaziranga in the northeast of India. And it's one of the greatest conservation success stories actually in Asia. So it's wonderful. So I made this tusk, which almost looks like an elephant tusk, out of bronze, with these small people sort of climbing on top. And with the rhino, almost it's like it's falling off into the brink of extinction. So it's almost like it's stepping off. And one of the reasons that I've done that is I've detailed the rhino beautifully to make it look like a rhino. And the bronze tusk itself is meant to just represent how this poor rhino is just being killed for its horn. So I think I wanted to exaggerate.
That's the embodiment.
That absolutely, as the embodiment, So this beautiful creature is being killed just for its horn. And the great thing is that it's a success story. So it's a positive note. It's actually a positive connotation. It's a great artwork because it's meant to be, it's a positive story of how like the rhinos have overcome that.
In fact, one of the other sculptures that I saw of yours was also one which you called the narcissist, which is, can you explain about that sculpture?
That sculpture was just, it's a fun sculpture for me. I would say it's a light-hearted sculpture.
Yes.
And very much works with my personality as well, if people know me.
Yeah.
It's a cocky sort of rooster. And it's almost in a dancing position where
Yes.
it's like staring at itself. So literally you've got a hand here with
Yes.
a rooster staring at itself.
Yeah.
And it was actually meant to earlier be a play on just like the human selfishness.
Yeah.
But if you really look at it, it's like it's a dancing piece, it's a light piece.
And you also made political personality sculptures. As I was going through your book, I can show you these two sculptures. One was Arun Jaitley, our former finance minister of India, and Jawaharlal Nehru. So these are busts that you have made. Could you talk about these busts?
So I actually got commissioned by private buyers to make
for this.
Yeah, for these. So that's how I made them. I would say it's extremely challenging, really, to make.
How much they weigh? Because bronze is a heavy metal.
I think each of these weigh about 40-50 kilos.
40-50 kilos, just that small bust. Life size.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The life size.
You have also shown about bronze sculptures which are hanging from the ceiling, which are ceiling installations, about acrobatics, like the one which can be seen here. So could you speak about that? Where do these kind of sculptures go? Do they go in farmhouses? Do they go in resorts?
So that piece is actually iron and fiber.
Okay.
Because bronze would have brought the roof down. So,
it's so heavy.
Yeah, it's so heavy. So this piece being in fiber and iron is about 250 kilos. Okay. In bronze, it would have easily been 1,000 kilos. Right. And it's hanging at the Tijara Hotel in one of the Nimrana properties in Pakistan. And I think the whole point was like just the free spirit, of the piece. So you see these people, they're happy, they're swinging, they're in the air. And if you go to that hotel, it's a very freeing, lovely hotel on top of a hill. So it was just trying to embody the feeling that you get when you go to the hotel.
In fact, you have other interesting sculptures, but please complete the name.
No, I mean, so that was the whole intent of the piece. And it was a wonderful piece to work on. It's 15 feet, so it was quite large. And I think it was challenging to hang it from the ceiling, but it was a great learning experience.
Like your other interesting sculptures you made about turtles on stones, which is a very interesting concept.
Yeah.
Was that the inspiration for it, or where did it come from?
Actually, to be honest, my grandmother Babsi Nariman, who's no longer with us, loved turtles. So my whole idea for even making artworks or turtles began with her.
Okay.
So when I had started, it started as these smaller tortoises, which I'm sure you've seen in my show, which are on small rocks. And I decided that I'd like a larger embodiment of tortoises for them to look, well, in their original size, some of them. And some was exaggerated in various sizes.
In fact, you've made very interesting other sculptures, like fishes in the sea. I think among the seaweeds, you also made on different animals.
Yeah, absolutely.
So these are all commissioned pieces, or you also like to, in a sense, make?
No, none of these are actually commissioned pieces. So the only commissioned pieces I did have were for hotels or for the bus.
Yeah.
These were made according to themes that it's something that I'm passionate about.
Yes.
In the fine art route. So I'm not in commercial art. I go into more fine art is something I would
In fact, you also made one on birds, which is also displayed in your exhibition. It's a very interesting installation which you had.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's something that I do on wildlife conservation. Yeah. So each of these animals are some animals around the world that have actually been saved. So it's a positive message of conservation. So if you talk about the fish, it's the orange ruffy. They were from Australia and they were almost consumed to death. They came down to only 30% of their population. And then luckily, the government put a ban on them and now they've raised abundantly in numbers again. Even for the birds, there are these starling birds, which unfortunately now are starting to die out in other parts of the world. Those again are coming up in numbers. So each of my stories are mostly conservation success stories, I would say. And it's something that I'd really like. I mean, it's a theme I'm passionate about. So it's something I'd like to keep going.
Thanks for sharing this. Now we'll go to K.R. Nariman's grandfather, Fali Nariman, and K.R. Nariman's mother, Sanaya Nariman, for their observations on what K.R. Nariman does. Welcome back. You just heard Fali Nariman as well as Sanaya Nariman on K.R. Nariman's sculptures. How much of an inspiration your parents have been for what all you do? Because I think this is art is an endeavor where you need support, in a sense, moral also, of your, because I think this is a lonely vocation. You need to spend a lot of times alone when you make this. How much of inspiration has your grandfather, your mother, your father been?
I mean, honestly, my whole family has been, I mean, it's the only reason that I've been able to do this, frankly speaking. So I would say I owe everything to them. And as a family, we travel a lot together as well. So a lot of my inspiration actually comes from my travels with them as well. And even them, to bounce off ideas, they're all intellectual beings, as I mean, everyone knows. They're fantastic people even to talk about, even though it's a completely different field. But I love hearing their opinions. Grandpa, of course, I mean, has been absolutely great because he's the person I speak to almost daily about my artworks and even the tiny nitty-gritties that go along with it. And the business of even having, say, to run, artworks, because at the end of the day, you are selling them. And my mom has been my hugest source of inspiration, which is something I think I've always said from the beginning. She's been, well, my number one supporter from day one and continues to be so. And dad's been just wonderful because I can speak to him about everything. And he's one of the reasons I can do this. And Nina, of course, and my brother-in-law. So
good. So, K.R. Nariman, we wish you all the best in this interesting line of work that you've chosen. It is niche. Not many people take it up. Would like to attend your exhibition sometime once again and chat about another kind of sculptures, because you keep on working on new themes. And I think there is a lot to offer from your side in the coming years. Looking forward to interview more on these things. That's it for now. But thank you so much for giving your time and joining us. And thank you viewers for tuning in. Thank you so very much. So joining us is eminent jurist Fali Nariman, and K.R. Nariman happens to be his granddaughter. And I would request you to say a few words about her, because you've seen her ground up in a sense when she got interested in sculpting, and now when she's holding exhibitions all over India and also doing commission artworks. So a couple of words from your end, sir.
Yes, thank you. Yes, I'm delighted, of course, to say something about my own granddaughter. And one of the delights for the Nariman family is that we have been spinning the legal cocoon for many, many years and decades. And now she has branched out into something entirely different, but exhilarating. And in fact, her studio is in my home. And therefore, I get to meet her constantly throughout the day, throughout the evening, whenever she's doing something. And she's always doing something. And it's a very strenuous job, really. Sculpting is not a simple thing. It's not like painting or drawing and so on. It's sculpting has a different ethos, and see, if you have your mind to it, there's a lot of work to be done, both mental and physical, because in a bronze sculpture there's a lot of physical element involved, and then coloring the bronze sculpture and so on, and therefore that I think has sparked in her an interest, which I hope over the years will blossom into something big. And therefore, I'm extremely proud of my granddaughter, and I'm sure she will continue to do well in the future.
Thank you. Thank you so much for these comments. I'm sure they'll be treasured for a long, long time to come coming from you. And thank you so much for joining in. So joining us now is Sanaya Nariman. She is K.R. Nariman's mother, and who's seen her interest in art since she was a child, and then she took up sculpting. Now that she's holding exhibitions all over India, it indeed makes her a proud mother, and also that she started to do a lot of commissioned bronze works and also other kinds of sculpting. Good to see you, Sanaya, and may I request a good comment about your daughter from your side?
Of course, K.R. Nariman has been at it, in fact, since she was an infant, because every time we took her to Golbar, to my mother's place, she would always comment on what fantastic sculpting she's doing, whether it's at the sand, whether it's at home, whether it's in the farm. She was always fidgety and always doing things with her hands. We discovered that when she went to Triveni. She joined a painting class, after which she joined sculpting and not looked back, because what she brought with her was really, really very good, mature stuff. And she'd tell her teacher, I can make it for you. I will not draw it. Don't waste my time drawing it. I'm making it for you, ma'am. And she'd do it while the other students were sketching things which they had to make later. That's how she started.
And say in about 2-3 lines, if you could talk about, in a sense, her passion for art, because I think this is hard labor. It takes a lot of time to do any piece, sometimes even months. If you could just
months and months. The larger sculptures you see take months and months. The smaller take 2 months, because the process is a long and very involved one. It's relatively also lonesome one, because all artists work alone in their studios with the team that is helping them, with the team who is doing other manual work and helping them around. But it's a lonesome one. And then when you have exhibitions, you go to single solos or you go to group exhibitions. That's the public face. But otherwise, it's months and months of very isolated, intense work.
So this was Sanaya Nariman. She is mother of K.R. Nariman for you. She spoke about how it has lots of passion. It takes months of hard work. Exhibition is just about those few hours in a year.
The peak of the triangle.
The peak of the triangle, but it's a lot of hard work. Thank you and appreciate your joining us, and thank you for your time. So joining us is Niharika Karanjawala, and Niharika is somebody who knows K.R. Nariman since childhood, of course, and now Niharika herself works with Karanjawala and company. She's a lawyer. She has interest in art, and that's how they have been discussing about these things. But if you could just talk about K.R. Nariman for a bit and her artworks, and also you saw her as a child, so was she always interested in art? What were the things like? So on and so forth.
Tarun, she was always very creative. Even in school, she was always very creative. We worked on the school magazine together. Both she and her sister, they were always very literary, very creative, both clearly very intelligent girls. I didn't know until she eventually went into the field, until she went in to Triveni and began with art school and whatnot. I didn't know that she had such an interest in sculpture. Otherwise, I mean, I would have loved to. I have a purely academic interest in sculpture, but I would have loved to have spoken to her about it in the old days. But it seemed like something she took to like a fish to water, and immediately it just seemed very clear that it was something she had been planning for quite a while and something that she had thought about and was passionate to go into. And when you see her art today, you can see it from that as well, because bronzes. And when I went to her exhibition recently, it struck me bronze is a very heavy medium. It's a weighty sort of medium, but somehow there's a great lightness to her pieces, and she manages to bring a lot of delicacy into them, which really isn't, I mean, at least I wouldn't think is something very easy or something that comes naturally to most people. So it really shows you someone who is not only putting a great deal of thought into how each piece is going to come through, but also defying, in a sense, the very nature of the medium itself. It really goes to show she's an incredibly fine artist.
So if you could in about 2 lines share with us, you saw her exhibition, you also saw her artworks. If you could tell me that when somebody takes up such a profession, of course, you are in the profession law, which requires a lot of commitment, but when in art, you have to put in 2 and 3 months alone. And then when you do an exhibition, that's the peak of your innocence exposition where you have done everything. What kind of intensities does KR have in her working style? What do you feel about that?
Absolutely. And I'm so glad that you pointed that out, because in that sense, in the social sense, we're in two completely disparate professions, because the law is a profession of people, and you're surrounded by people all day. You see them in the courts, you're dealing with people's problems. So you never feel as though you're alone. But when you're an artist, it is sort of a solitary slog, working towards it. And she has pointed out, because I've discussed it with her a few times, exactly what goes into the process and whatnot. It's time consuming, it's dedication, and it is, like you said and like you pointed out, to a great extent lonely. It is solitary. You have to spend your time, it's just you and your ideas. And then you have this small amount of time in your exhibits or in your books, as she had, trying to convey to the general public exactly what that idea was. And I would think that would be a stressful time. Having such a truncated amount of time, it would be stressful, and you would just be bursting with trying to put your ideas out there. But what I've seen of Khushi, she's very calm when the exhibition is going on. She's very cool when it's going on. And I think her intensity is something that she pours into the work and doesn't necessarily throw at the public. She allows them to take what they will from what the sculpture is, which I thought was a fantastic balance.
Thank you, Niharika, for sharing your experiences in
Thank
dealing
you for having me.
KR Nariman. Appreciate your joining us. Thank you so very much.
Thank you for having me.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.